Hello and welcome to our Multilingual Learners Strategies for Developing Listening Comprehension webinar with edWeb. We are so pleased to be here with you today. Thank you so much for joining. It's an honor to be here with Beth Skelton. So you're in the right place. You're here for our webinar, Multilingual Learners Strategies for Listening Comprehension. Such an honor to be with you all today. We're going to introduce ourselves. So I'll kick it over to Paul.
Hi. Thanks, Karis, for that beginning information for the edWeb webinar. My name is Beth Skelton. I'm a presenter, a coach, and a consultant, and I am coming to you from Colorado. I notice I have some of my colleagues here in the session, and they will understand and commiserate that you see this strap on my side. I am recovering from a shoulder ski injury where I dislocated and broke my shoulder. So I am learning how to operate with my non-dominant hand, my left hand, and building lots of brain cells, and also getting a lot of empathy for our multilingual learners because using your non-dominant language to learn is kind of what I'm doing now, using my non-dominant hand to do all kinds of specific tasks that I would never use my left hand for. So it's wonderful to have so many people in the room. We have international guests as well as people from Maine to California, Florida, Washington. We welcome the whole nation and world into the webinar. Thank you for being here. Karis.
Yeah, grateful to be here. Also joining you from Colorado, fellow Colorado soul. And before joining the Listenwise team, I was an elementary educator and administrator. And now in my role at Listenwise, I bring Listenwise to schools and districts across the country, across the world. So great to have so many different people on the call. And at this time, we'd love to open up some polls to know who's in this space. So go ahead and complete this poll so we have an idea of who's here with us today. Wow, loving the active engagement. Everyone's just right to it.
That's great.
Awesome.
Lots of others, which is interesting. If you want to drop in the chat what your other is, that would be great. So we have learning literacy coaches. We forgot to put coach on there. That would consultants, coaches, pre-K, district-wide instructional. Oh, perfect. Instructional leaders, learning specialists. Thank you for dropping those additionals in there. College professors, welcome, welcome. We are so glad you are all here. Thanks. And Karis, should we go ahead and do the second poll? That really gives us a feel of who's in the room.
Yep. And then this helps us understand all of this wonderful students that you're working with day in and day out. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about the brilliant students that are in your classrooms.
So we have mostly the gen ed with some ELs at all levels, and noticing who's in the room, literacy specialists and coaches. Of course, they're working across those bands. And then a lot of you are working really with only English language learners at all levels of English language acquisition, which is wonderful, and very few at those advanced levels or the experienced multilingual levels. So thank you, thank you. We've got a math teacher in the room. Thank you for being here, and a math coach as well. Listening and math, also a key. We could add some, how do we do this in math when we're going through this? So thank you for being here. Isabel, on taking the survey, Karis, do you want to give her a quick? It should be coming right up on your screen for any of the polls.
It should be coming up on your screen. I believe that's how you should be taking it.
And Aisha, related services, the deaf and hard of hearing, that is something that I'm going to have Karis address as well, with how do you do listening activities with that? You're going to have to figure that out for your special population. We will talk about using text with the listening to support it, but not specifically for deaf and hard of hearing. So Karis, if you've got some ideas, keep that in mind. We know somebody in the room is looking for that. All right.
Absolutely. All right. Well, great to know who is in the room. I'm going to close out this poll. And just to know who you are here with, our webinar today is also sponsored by Listenwise. At Listenwise, we are the go-to resource to support multilingual learners in developing stronger literacy and language skills through engaging multimodal lessons. So we do this through providing curated podcast and video lessons for students in grades 2 through 12, and we have content in English language development, English language arts, social studies, STEM, and current events. And all of our lessons, we really firmly believe in providing access points for all students so they're easy to differentiate and scaffold to meet student needs. So that's a little bit about who we are. And now I'll kick it over to Beth for our agenda and where we're going today.
That's great. Thank you, Karis. And if you are already using Listenwise or you have played with it, dabbled with it, will you let us know in the chat? On today's agenda, we are working with this idea of comprehensible input. So a very brief introduction to that theory and why listening is so key. And then we're going to look at strategies for developing listening comprehension. What I find as a presenter, a coach, a consultant, I'm in classrooms all over the world. And what I find is that we expect students to listen, but we don't actually directly teach the listening skills. And that's what today's session is about. We're going to look at 4 strategies that can be used with any kind of auditory input and how that can help students actually learn the listening skills. And we'll go through that today, and you'll get to experience them in the session. So let's go ahead with our very first idea of this comprehensible input, which has been around since the 1980s with our famed Stephen Krashen, who talks about the importance of having input that students understand. And that if they get that comprehensible input, language acquisition or output happens. Really comprehensible input is simply making any of our ideas that come through a presentation, a podcast, a video, any kind of auditory input. And for those of hard of hearing, of course, it would be any of your visual inputs as well, that making that input, even reading input, comprehensible. It has to be understandable. So I could be in China listening to the radio all day long, but it's just noise unless I understand it. And anything that I understand is going then to develop my language ability in that other language. And once I have that, once I hear it, once I understand it, then I can start to use the output, right? Then I can start to speak and write any kind of output that would also be comprehensible to those that are listening, which leads, it's actually a circle back into more comprehensible input. We have to be able to express those ideas then academically in our school setting using oral, speech, writing, visuals, all of the output methods. So that's the idea. And we're going to use today, you're going to have a video clip and how to use that. We'll have a podcast clip and how to use that. We're going to see text and how to use that. How do we make the input comprehensible to teach listening strategies? Now, I'm going to use a quick example from the Listenwise resource, but you can use any video or any podcast or anything that is at your students' level to provide that comprehensible input and teach these listening strategies. So if you'll notice in here, this is one of the library ELD or ESL lessons on Listenwise. And we are using this last one about picking watercress, just to give you an idea of the kinds of things that we do. And if EdWeb would now play that video, this would be building background knowledge. I'm going to show only 30 seconds of the clip as EdWeb gets that video ready to go. Listen through, and then we'll do an activity.
You can also make people feel welcome by expressing interest in learning about their culture in a respectful way. It is important to acknowledge that you don't know everything, but that you have an open mind to find out more. Celebrate what makes you and your friends different. Learning about other cultures can extend into the classroom. Express to your teachers and adults in your life that you want to learn more about cultures different from your own. Ask lots of questions.
The clip itself is about 1.5 minutes. You just saw about 30 seconds to give you an idea. This is building background before the students would listen to a podcast. I love that Lindsay in the chat says that she has used these resources and agrees that listening as a skill is rarely taught. We just expect students to know how to listen. Well, this first activity, spot the screenshot, is just an addition to all the other activities you do, and you may have already done it, but you'll notice I screenshotted from that 30 seconds you just saw. Actually, I think number 4 was not in the clip, but it's fine. So then what I'm going to do is have you check selective listening. In the chat, get your chat fingers ready. I will make a statement, and it's one of the principles for creating an inclusive environment that was the feature of this background building video. And so I'm just going to make one of the statements and drop into the chat the number of the screenshot that most likely represents that principle. Ready? Here we go. Drop in the chat the number for this. Ask questions. Ask questions. That's one of the principles. What number best represents ask questions? Look at all those 3s coming in. Nice job. So what I'm asking you to do is to listen, right? That's a specific listening matching to one of the clips. It gets harder. Ready? Here's the next one. Celebrate unique differences. Celebrate unique differences. And I'm getting 1s and 4s, 2s. Again, it won't matter because now I can have students turn and talk and justify why they chose 1 or 4 or 2 for that answer. So it really doesn't matter as long as they can justify that they understood that celebrate and the unique differences. Okay, let's try another one. Learn about other cultures. Learn about other cultures. I love it. I'm getting lots of 2s in the box, some 1s. Again, this would be a place where students would then justify, turn and talk. It's learn because they're in a classroom and they're learning about each other, or it's learning because in number 2, the women are talking to each other. Again, it doesn't matter. So the first one I started with ask questions. Everyone got number 3 because hands were up and you could justify that. And then I'm just making statements to match. Now, some of the videos you'll use have clear action verbs, have clearly, this is the right answer. And others you can see are a little bit more nebulous. It doesn't really matter because it's about the students listening and justifying what they heard with the picture. So that's an activity that any video can work with. You just grab screenshots that highlight some of the key points in the video that the students then can go back. It's like a re-listening or a listening check. And I love doing that. It doesn't take a lot of prep. Any video clip will work, but I would keep it relatively short. Notice we did about 30 seconds. And then you had all of that, language that we were working with to do it. So that's called spot the screenshot. The next one that we're going to do is a see, think, wonder. Again, this could be a screenshot from that building background video that you just had, or you could choose a different picture. Now, the Listenwise resources have tons of pictures. Karis is going to show you about that anyway, but really any of the resources that you use before students are asked to listen to a longer video clip or a podcast with lower context, build the background through really taking time with a visual that builds the vocabulary and the context that they're about to hear. This strategy called See, Think, Wonder comes from Harvard Project Zero. And EdWeb, if you wouldn't mind dropping that in, it's Harvard Project Zero, and they're free online resources. You'll see Think, Wonder. It is not mine. If you've not done this with students, it is one of my very favorite for building vocabulary, background, and curiosity for any unit. It's one way I start most of my units. So we'll start with the chat. Let's start with the first part, see. What do you see in that picture on the screen? And you can just complete the sentence frames in any way you want. You don't have to write the I see or I notice. Great. We see food, 2 people. Great. We see people making food, cooking, dumplings, family. Oh, I'm going to take family in just a moment. That's great. Bonding, I'm going to take as an example. Containers, thank you. You notice, oh, we see a mom and a daughter. I'm going to take that one. Thank you. So if you can see it, you have to be able to label it. And what a lot of you are doing, which is great, is you're going to the next step. You're making inferences. Beautiful. So what I would do with the students is just like with you, I would have them partner instead of in a chat, right? We're in a team, and you back and forth. I see a red sweater. I see dumplings. I see a bowl. I see a spoon. I see red diamonds. I see whatever it is that you can actually label. Now, some people like Michelle are saying, is it Chinese New Year? She's starting into the wonder. Now we're jumping into the next step. So once I label everything on the slide, just like the students are saying, like red shirt, these should be able to be labeled. Hand, dumplings, anything I can label. You can see the squash on there. We can continue. Look at the vocabulary I have built. Now, what many, many of you went to is the I think. You made a beautiful inference that you see a mother and a daughter. Now, I actually can't be sure that's a mother and a daughter. It looks like it because there's a younger woman and an older woman and they're working together, but it could be an aunt and a niece. It could be friends. It could be a teacher and a student. It could be a lot of different things. So what we do now is get to inferencing. Inferencing for our multilingual learners with text is really tricky, but with a visual, inferencing is a skill that they can succeed at. And you've already demonstrated that by showing that in the chat. So Itamar, I love that you're saying it's a cooking class. That's a good inference. You think it's a cooking class because two people are cooking. It could be preparations for Chinese New Year at home, but you made an inference about it being a cooking class. This is awesome. Please drop in the chat those inferences, and you can just fill in the red dots. You don't have to type the whole thing. What are your inferences? What do you think is going on in this picture and why? What do you infer about what's going on in this picture and why? Go ahead and take that time now. Yes. So you think it's a mom teaching a teenage daughter to make dumplings. That's beautiful. You think they're celebrating Chinese New Year. You think that it's an older generation teaching a younger generation. Oh, somebody thinks it's a fundraiser. I would love to know the because on that one. I love that it's a bonding through cooking. They're passing on the tradition of making dumplings. These are these cultural settings, and it's building background for our students for what they're about to learn in the podcast about cultural lessons that we learn with each other. These inferences are beautiful. And just like I'm doing here is like reading what the kids said, the students, you're my students in the class, I would have them share with each other and then share out loud, and we would chart it just like you're doing here in there is chart your thinking. And the follow-up, like when someone said, I think it's a cultural lesson, I said, oh, what makes you say that? I would follow up with what is the text evidence, the picture evidence, plus your background knowledge that makes you come up with that inference, which is a great inference. We have just taught students what inferencing is, using the evidence in the text, the picture, plus my background knowledge of cooking with my mom, for example, on a holiday. And I put the two together to create an inference. I love that some of you are making connections to standardized testing like the TELPUS. Thank you so much for putting that in there from Texas, that these are really powerful ways of supporting our students with the skills they need in other situations. It also builds their ability to listen closely later. So we're building that background knowledge before the listening. Beautiful. So that's the think. And you can see how rich that part is. In my classroom, sometimes we get through the see and the think, and we don't even get to wonder until the next day. And that's what the next step is. So now just jot some questions. What do you wonder about what's going on in the picture? You wonder if or what or who or where or when. And if you would jot some questions in the chat, that would be great. Yeah, who are they? That's beautiful. What are they making it for? What's the preparation? Who is the food for? When will they get to eat? Does the younger girl enjoy this? What's the recipe for? These are great. What's the purpose? Would the girl rather be with her friends and she's rather not there? How long does it take to cook? Are they having fun? What's inside the dumplings? Wow! What's in the white bowl? Do you see? We are generating this curiosity all based on this one picture. And I chart those. And then if the text that we're going to read is about this picture, the students can look for those answers of their questions in there. Or it can be a launch into an inquiry-based unit. It can be launched into individual students researching different pieces. I love this. Is this recipe being passed down? Is the recipe written somewhere? Can anyone make this? I mean, these are so beautiful. Is the girl visiting her grandmother in a native country? Oh, these are wonderful because it sets us up for what's going to come in the listening. I'm just getting goosebumps. These are so great. So that's See, Think, Wonder, and how powerful this really zero prep. You just need a good picture that launches into build the background for what you're going to be hearing next. So that is 2 ways that we build background before the listening. First, it's a little bit of a video with those clips, and we say, spot the screenshot. Can you listen and judge the screenshot? And the second is See, Think, Wonder. Karis, how does that fit to what you've got going? And we'll tell that in a minute, but I wanted to show this See, Think, Wonder could be done even with a book cover. And this was in grade 2 with Owl Moon. Many of you probably know that story. And you can see the students and the teacher charting what they see in the cover of Owl Moon, what they think about what's happening in the book. And then each of the second grade students got their own sticky note to write their question. You can see, Think, Wonder can be used in any context. I know I have math teachers in here, so you're already making a See, Think, Wonder with a graph. But this is See, Think, Wonder from my colleagues in Manheim School District, Chicago, Phil Pominger and Lindita Haskell. They started their unit on force and motion with this picture. And the students had to See, Think, Wonder about what was going on there for force and motion. So it can be used in any context, any content. Math teachers, I'm sorry, I don't have my graph, but you can get the idea. The kids do a lot of see, question, what do you see? What do you think about what you see? And what are your questions about what you see? And graphing is great for See, Think, Wonder. See, Think, Wonder also builds so much language before they even get into the listening. So they're describing. When you describe anything, that function of describe, they have to say things like something has or something is. That's the sentence structure or the language function. And they can also just say, I see or I notice. That can be done in the heritage language and then double labeled on the visual in heritage languages and in English so that students are making connections right away to the English. It also teaches the language function of explain because they have to explain their thinking. I think, like I infer, and then the because. They have to justify it with that text or picture evidence or their background knowledge. And then finally, the language function of See, Think, Wonder, that's inquire. They learn to ask questions. The structure of asking questions is one of the hardest things for our language learners from different language backgrounds because of the do, the does, the sentence structure, the use of the question words, which are abstract. So I highly recommend that all question words are translated and posted because students aren't going to be able to ask or answer questions if they don't know what the question word is. So this is one that it's just hard with a gesture to do who, what, when, where, why. We translate these for sure in all cases in the classroom for all the languages that you have in your classroom. You'll also notice that my question word cards have little icons or images. So that's also like who is kind of a person or a thing that you're asking about, an animal. And these are available on my website, bethskelton.com, for free with Spanish and English, but make them yours and put all the other languages on them. This is a deeper support for maybe more advanced students. question words down that vertical, and then across the top, you're getting into like the would or will or might or could. Clearly, the yellow can be expanded way out, but what you're trying to do is help students formulate questions. And this would be for more advanced learners to ask more types of questions. It's great. Karis, how can we use these two building background activities with the Listenwise materials?
Oh, thank you, Beth. Just this rich discussion that everyone is having in the chat. You can bring this to your classroom with the Listenwise material. So all of our lessons have that good picture ready to go for you. There are many pictures, so you can engage in an active See, Think, Wonder sequence with your students with our pictures. We have those videos ready to go, so you can help to build background knowledge right there for your students. And of course, we also have vocabulary cards. So just to support your students as they're forming their sentences about what they see and what they might think. So all ready to go for you. And of course, this is all outlined in a teacher's guide. So ready to go and share right there for your students. And the pictures they're available to use right there for you. So when you're in the platform. And now I'll kick it back over to you, Beth.
Thanks. And there's a great question that came in. Kelsey, thank you for asking, how often do I do a See, Think, Wonder? I actually launch pretty much every one of my units with some kind of See, Think, Wonder, because that visual is there. And if I'm teaching social studies, it's some kind of map that we're going to start with. Or if I'm in math, it's the graph, or it's just a math problem that they're going to look at. What do they see? What do they notice? What do they wonder about this? And so you can launch a science unit, a social studies unit, and a language arts unit with a really rich picture of what's coming up in that text. So it's kind of a great easy launch for any unit. It can be done in the middle, it can be done at the end, but that's often when I do the See, Think, Wonder is as a launch to build background, vocabulary, curiosity, excitement for getting into the lesson. Somebody asked about a handout. You will get the recording and the slides, which can serve as your handout because everything's there. So thanks for those questions. All right, now, you've had this chance to build background, and you're either now going to jump into text or you're going to listen. And I'm not sure there's a right or wrong on this. I'm going to start with text because listening is one of the most difficult. Listening to just a podcast or a phone call when it's decontextualized, there's no visual, there's no gestures. Listening is one of the hardest things to do. Text, I can reread, I can slow down, I can look something up, but speech goes fast and it's gone. And so we're building the ability to listen to a decontextualized podcast or a decontextualized conversation or a decontextualized phone call. We're building that up. We're going to start with text. But again, you can try it in different ways. The text, what you see on the screen, is actually the transcript of the podcast that the students will be listening to soon. Now, this is just the first 2 paragraphs of it. And I'm going to give a quiet moment to scan that text if you haven't already. And you'll see it's Lulu Garcia Navarro. She's the interviewer, and Andrea Wong is the person telling the story. So I'm going to be quiet to scan that text. Super. So you can get a sense that this is quite, it's natural text. It's not reduced for our language learners in any way, but they're going to be able to relate to the story from their own experiences. But I would say before I hand students this text the way it is, this is just the transcript of the podcast. How could I make that text more comprehensible without simplifying it. Yes, there are all kinds of AI tools out there now. I could copy and paste this into Diffit and that's diffit.com, I believe. And I could ask for 4 different levels if I wanted of this same text. So there is that option. But I would like students to have access to the text that they're going to hear, to give them that preview and to help them to get to the complexity and build their ability to understand complex text. So let's keep the text itself. What could I do to that text? And you can drop this in the chat to make it more comprehensible, but I'm not going to simplify the text itself. Yay, Kelly. I could add pictures, Tyann. You got it. Kelly, icons, the visuals. There could be highlights. Yes, I could focus on cognates. Yes, Caroline, I could do something to treat that text. I could pre-teach some vocabulary, which may or may not have been pre-taught in the See, Think, Wonder and the spot the image. You're right. I could use that juicy sentence strategy, Tina. Yes, we're going to do that in the end. I might need a graphic organizer for this. I could use some gestures for some of the words. Super, the kids could act it out. These are beautiful. All of these ideas I'll take and put together and call it engineering the text. And notice what I did to this text to engineer it. So here's the engineered version. This is just the first chunk, Lulu Garcia Navarro's discussion. What you notice is just what you dropped into the chat already. Thank you. You'll see that I chunked it. So this is just the first part. For each chunk, I have a guiding question. That guiding question helps the students focus on what to either listen for or to read for. Now, this is huge. If I started with a listening task, I would also chunk it. And they would listen only to Lulu Garcia Navarro's introduction. And I would have them say, listen for what the parents do when they see that watercress. And I've pulled up the picture of watercress so they have an image. Now they're listening to the first chunk only. What do the parents do when they see it? That's all they're listening for. So I am teaching the strategy of selective listening or selective reading. We're reading for a purpose. The next thing that I've done, and you'll notice, I've added a translation or a cognate. So immigrants and immigrante, I'm pointing out to the students with that highlighted cognate, you know words in here, notice them. You can use your cognate, your first language, your right hand, so to speak, you can use that to read this text. The next that I've done is I've added some labeled visuals. The watercress is labeled. I don't just put a random picture in there. I'm not having the students guess that that's watercress, label it. And then finally, there are those synonyms. So the word spot is used unusually in this text. They may know the word spot, like I have a spot on my jacket, but they don't know that spot also means to see. So I just put it in there. The vegetable, I put watercress in there because what this is a renaming of the noun. So it's a way of text cohesion. Instead of saying watercress, 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 Lulu Garcia Navarro said vegetable later, but the students may not make the connection that the watercress is the vegetable. So I gave a synonym there for watercress. These are all strategies for engineering the text. Yes, it takes time. And it gives our students who are at a WIDA level 2, 3, 4 access to grade level and higher text. It's worth it, especially if it's short chunks of text. And if you work as a team, you can engineer quite a bit of text. Students can also be taught this strategy of adding visuals, looking for cognates, adding synonyms when they can do it on their own as well. So you can see that here's an engineered text example using some of the strategies that came up in the chat about icons. This is from grade 1. Now, Katie Topple works up in Oregon, and she does this for comprehension purposes, not for decoding purposes. So the students are reading this grade 1 text only for comprehension. And so the word tree has a tree above it. Air has air. Soil has soil. Water has water. We aren't doing this for when they're just practicing decoding, but rather to support their comprehension. So just keeping that in mind. Here's an example of an engineered text in science. And so again, it's chunked. You see a graphic, a visual, and that came up in the chat, as well as an idea of some kind of graphic. This is an infographic on the number of volcanoes. You see a picture of what's going on in the text. You see the color-coded synonyms and cognates. All of these are examples of how to engineer a grade level text. Thank you for the feedback in the box. Engineering that text is one way that we can absolutely accelerate our students' ability to access grade level complex text. The idea is not mine. It's a big shout out to Aida Walke and her work on engineering text. And she's at West Ed. And this is where it came from. And I've just continued to build examples and lots and lots of examples that I have. Websites to find quick visuals. Thank goodness for Google Images. You can tell by my face, I have taught before Google Images existed. Unbelievable how we used to do that back then. So tons of ideas for getting visuals into the text. So that's one example. Now, once the students have engineered, and by the way, Karis, can you check, are there any questions about engineering the text that came in?
No questions that I was seeing. I'll double check though and see. Yeah.
Great. Kelly, thank you. I love, love, love the Noun Project. I wonder how I taught before Noun Project. Pixabay is brilliant for actual visuals. Noun Project are icons. And if you pay for the version of Noun Project, you can do it in colors as well. So I use both of those regularly a lot. Now, are we talking about the text that we will be using the audio for later? Yes. Thank you for Aisha for that clarification. So what I just showed you with the original text, this Lulu Garcia Navarro engineered text, we are going to hear exactly that text in a moment. Okay, so that we're building the ability for students to successfully listen to a podcast. And again, I'm not just going to let that podcast play for the whole 3 minutes. I'm going to stop it and do some of these kinds of questioning and listening focused activities as well. This all came before to build their background knowledge and ability to listen carefully and understand. So we're building that comprehension. That was the whole focus, making sure the input from the podcast is comprehensible by the time they get there. Thank you, Aisha, for that clarification. Any others that you saw Karis come in for clarification? Super.
One.
Now we're going to actually do a listening comprehension strategy. This is called text reconstruction. You have, let's go through what we've already done. You built background with a video. You spotted the screenshot. So we got practice with listening very carefully for the principles of cultural learning, and the principles of inclusive environment was the name of that background video. We did a see, think, wonder and built that background on cultural practices and cooking together, just so we're prepped for watercress. We engineered the text so that by the time you get to listening, you've actually read the podcast with those visuals and made a lot of meaning. Okay. Lynette is asking about newcomers. With newcomers, I'm going to take it a lot slower. I'm going to choose my podcast and my listening to their level, and I'm going to use a lot less. Okay, so newcomers can get there, but I might only do a small chunk. And so I think what we're going to do next will help you and see how you could do this with a newcomer, even if it's a smaller chunk of text than what I'll model with this for you. And before someone, Barbie in the chat is saying, before reading and listening to the information, knowledge can be shared collaboratively. They have done that absolutely. They've been interacting all along, like with the See, Think, Wonder. They've been interacting as they read this text in partnerships. And absolutely, it's like what kindergarten teachers do all the time, right? I've just ramped it up. I do it with high school. So I love that they said this is similar to kindergarten. because I always tell my colleagues, I often say, let's go down to kindergarten and watch how they make it comprehensible. And then what can we take from our kindergarten colleagues all the way up to high school math, to high school social studies, because the strategies are the same. We're just moving it up into the context that's appropriate for the student's age that we're working with. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Let's go now to the next strategy. You have now listened to the text, let's say once, and you've had time to discuss it with your partner and answer some questions. And now we're going to go back in, and somebody earlier had talked about a juicy sentence method. It's called language dive or juicy sentence from Lily Wong Fillmore. We're going to do that with listening. It's called text reconstruction. So if you have a piece of paper handy, please grab it now. You'll also want something to write with. Okay, so paper and pen or pencil to write with. It's a challenge. I am going to give you the first sentence for the text, and I'd like you to just listen the first time through for comprehension, right? This is from the interviewer, Lulu Garcia Navarro. This is our sentence. In the children's picture book, Watercress, a young girl is driving with her parents when they spot watercress growing by the side of the road. Now, that was one sentence. For those of you who know the juicy sentence strategy, which I'm not going to get into, you know that that's a juicy sentence. It is a complex sentence. So step one, I would just have you share the meaning with your partner at this point. What did you understand? We'd talk about it, make sure everyone understands it. Step two of this process, text reconstruction, is that I will read it again. I'd like you to write as many words and phrases in the order that they appear that you can as I read this in natural voice. I'm not going to slow it way down. You won't be able to write the whole sentence, but write as much as you can in chunks. Here we go. In the children's picture book, Watercress, a young girl is driving with her parents when they spot watercress growing by the side of the road. And Antoinette, you bet, I just repeated it there, and I'll repeat it again, don't worry. Because at step two, you just had a chance to write down anything that you could catch from that text. And now step three, we're going to do in the chat. But step three looks like what you see in the picture. Step three is that students are going to compare their notes. So what I'd love for you to do is drop in the chat any chunks of language from that first sentence that you were able to write down. Thank you, Nadia. That's exactly what I want. Young girl with parents, driving, spot watercress, outside by road. Perfect. Drop those in the chat. We're going to learn from each other. In the children's book, picture book. Good. Missed the first, driving with the parents on the road, side of the road. This is great. When they spot, children picture book, growing. Yes, yes, yes. Please grab from the chat. This is as if you're working with your partner now. You're grabbing from the chat, add to yours. So you're getting notes from your partner. Okay, perfect. Spot the watercress by the side of the road, alongside the road. Girl embarrassed, stop the car. This is great. Saw watercress. Oh my goodness. In the children's picture book, we have got so much of it already there. This is beautiful. All right. That's step three. The students have just interacted just like you did in the chat. I'm listening in and they're comparing notes. And here's a question for you. What I saw in the chat is that somebody said picture book, another person had children's book, another person had children's picture book, right? And you're all listening and you're going to listen now. Did I get all of it? Did I mishear? Did I do something different, right? Now you get to listen again and fill in the blanks. So hopefully using that chat, which was your interactive with your partner, I'll do it one more time. You're listening to fill in individually, and then we'll work with our partner. So I'm going to do it one more time because I know I've got people in there like, I can do it. Okay, grab your pen and paper. Here is it one more time. In the children's picture book, Watercress, A young girl is driving with her parents when they spot watercress growing by the side of the road. Wow, Jillian. Wow. I want to be Jillian's partner. Jillian nailed it. So what you would do now is with the partners, thanks, with your partner, you would take the time to reconstruct the text. And I would then challenge the students to think about punctuation and how are they actually going to write it, because this is where the complexity comes in English language, and we can get all into the details. And how do I show that it's a book? And we know that, right? I'm giving you hints. So I would give kids the time now to really think about in teams, how am I going to punctuate it? How do I get that sentence? Then in step 5, you get to compare. And you all have your paper in front of you. Compare your text to the original. In the children's book, did you get apostrophe S for children's? Watercress, did you put it in quotation marks? There's a comma. Did the comma come inside the second quotation mark? Ooh, these are tricky. And the students now are really doing a close comparison for their teams. A young girl is driving with her parents when they spot watercress growing by the side of the road. I noticed in the first one, a lot of you had alongside the road. And that's so interesting, right? That we put words that we would want to say in place of what was actually there in the text. So this is a very much a close listening strategy. It's a focused strategy for individual words. What are they hearing? We pick up their spelling with this. What words are they hearing? Are they missing words? It is so powerful, text reconstruction. Somebody asked about newcomers. When I worked with newcomers, the sentence might be, the book is about a young girl. Done. That's enough. And they are trying to write all of those words. If they've learned girl, right, young, and book, those are key words they would know. And they're doing the same process, but with a much shorter, simpler text. It's the same process, just at a newcomer level. So that's the step 5 to compare and analyze. And we talk about the differences. I love it. Melinda's like, Grammarly didn't like it. I use the Listenwise transcript. So have a go. You have this when you get the slides as the feedback for this session. You'll have this as the steps. We listen for meaning. We share that meaning with a partner. We listen and take notes individually. Then we share those notes with a partner to fill in missing information. We did a lot of this through the chat. Then you listen again and fill in that missing information before you reconstruct with the partner. The goal is to get as close as possible as the original complex text. And you decide what's complex for your grade level and for your level of language acquisition. Then we compare the text to the original and discuss those differences, like how do we punctuate for a book? How do we punctuate for a complex sentence? How do we... That it all becomes a mini lesson based on that one sentence from the Listenwise. Tina's asking, for upper grades, would you suggest doing this with multiple sentences or a paragraph versus just one sentence? Tina, I would start with one sentence. Give them a success experience. And you noticed as an adult what it took to get just one sentence. When I did this for the first time as an adult, it was with poetry. I was a disaster. I needed it like 6 more times. If I hadn't had my partner to help me, I wouldn't have gotten it at all. So it's really possible to do it with more, but they need the practice for listening specifically to individual words and meaning. So I would start with one sentence. Yes. Karis, you have other ideas for how to do these 2 strategies of text reconstruction and text reconstruction. Did I say, yeah, the first one, engineering the text and reconstruction. How do we do that with Listenwise?
Yeah, so you're able to use these engaging strategies of engineering the text and text reconstruction with our lessons. We have 3,000 different lessons ready to go for you, and they are leveled by English language proficiency level. So when you get in there, you have those texts ready to go, and within the text, you'll see, I want to call attention to this. There's this awesome text help toolbar here where your students, as they engineer the text, they can hover over different words and there's already a visual ready to go. So they can click on that word and see a picture. They can click on that word and see it translated in 15 different languages. So just a lot of different resources within the platform. So you can get in there and you can have your students engineer a Listenwise text. It's right there ready to go for you. Perfect. Well, with that, we are just very grateful for you all for joining. So grateful to have Beth here for our session together. And we're going to open it up for questions. So let's see.
And Karis, I'm jumping into the questions. So you can take the slides off and we can just have us. That's fine. I have a question from Monique about how would you use the See, Think, Wonder with a lesson on how to write a topic sentence? Monique, I've actually done that. So I love the question. What if you had a series of pictures? Let's say it's a picture of kids skiing, since that's on my mind, or kids playing in the sandbox. And you simply ask the question, what might be the topic of this? Now, students will say skiing, and then you say, oh, how do we write a whole sentence that's a topic sentence about this picture? Suddenly they have kids love skiing, or, that's like a second grade example, right? Or skiing is a fun sport, period. We now have topic sentences all based on that See, Think, Wonder. So you do the same kind of strategy using those pictures to launch them into it. And I have another great question about, is the text reconstruction where you listened, wrote your notes, listened again, filled in your notes with a partner, is that appropriate to use closed notes? Oh, thank you, Yvonne. It's a wonderful differentiation strategy. So when I have newcomers in the class or at different levels of language acquisition in the same class, some students will get more of the text already written out for them, and they're listening just for phrases, specific phrases. I rarely give them just a one-word close like to fill in. I give them that they have to listen for 2 or 3 words in a phrase, but I've given them some chunk of the text already filled out. That is a beautiful differentiation strategy. Thanks, Yvonne. Kelsey, you asked the first step is really just listening for meaning. How does this overlap or compare to dictated sentences in writing? Amanda, it is a dictation strategy. It is absolutely a dictation strategy, often also called dictogloss. Dictogloss, if you Google dictogloss or text reconstruction, again, these aren't mine. These are strategies that have been around for a very long time. Both will come up. So it is a dictation strategy and has all of the benefits of all the dictation strategies out there. The difference with text reconstruction is that you're also building not just listening, but speaking, because I'm speaking to my partner, and writing, because I'm checking and reading my partner's writing and my writing. So reading and writing, it is a swirl strategy. You're actually having speaking, writing, interacting, reading, and listening swirl in the text reconstruction. It is one of my favorites for swirling in the classroom. There are some questions, Karis, about Listenwise, cost, and free samples. Do you want to grab those in the question box?
Yeah, absolutely. So after you can get on and try Listenwise. We have a free trial when you go to our website that you can check out. And then on the cost front, I will drop my email in the chat. Probably the best way to learn more about exact cost for your student population is to reach out to me, and then we'll go from there.
Super. And the free trial for 2 weeks, you can get a really good idea of what's on there and how to use it with your multilingual learners and with all students, and the vastness of the library that's there. It has been so much fun to be with you and get a chance. Thank you for your active engagement. That chat was blowing up. If we missed any question, please pop it in the chat at the end. Thank you for the emojis, the thumbs up, the claps. It really inspires to see that coming through. It's really, really lovely. Thank you all so very much.
Again, thank you so much for attending, Beth. Thank you so much for sharing with the team and with everyone on this call. And want to do a small plug that Listenwise has a new product coming out called Lingo Lift, specifically to support newcomers. So excited to share more about Lingo Lift as time goes on with everyone. But thanks so much for coming out, team.
Yeah, and you're welcome to go. But Magdalena had a question on using these strategies with English language learners. We verbally communicate in real time, not in a prepared lesson. It's like scaffolds, right? We learn to ride a bike. Eventually, we want kids to ride without training wheels or without the supports, but we put in supports along the way. I am wearing a scaffold right now. Eventually, I will have my arm out of the sling, but in the moment, I need that support, that scaffold, to be able to build the strength in order to use my arm again. So for language learners, they're building the skills through these prepared and supported lessons so that out in the real world, they're getting better and better every single day. And we're providing those supports along the way. Magdalena, thank you for that question. All right, thanks.